The sky is a ledger of things we have forgotten how to read, filled with symbols and motions that once meant something to us, but now drift silently beyond our understanding. Most people look up and see stars, simple points of light scattered across the darkness, offering comfort without explanation. But for those whose eyes are pressed against the glass of a telescope, the sky becomes a series of questions that rarely offer satisfying answers. Most of those questions are dull, predictable, and safely contained within the laws of known physics. But 3i Atlas is not a boring answer. It is a question that has been traveling through the frozen vacuum of space for longer than our species has even had a name. Imagine a shape cutting through the darkness, not tumbling like a rock, but carving a path as straight and precise as a razor's edge. Its movement feels deliberate, controlled, and strangely purposeful. It is heading for Jupiter, and it is doing so with a level of intent that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. For a long time, we believed we were alone in the backyard of the solar system, but it now appears the neighbors simply own a very quiet car. On the 14th of October, 2025, the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System flagged a small and seemingly insignificant signature. At first, it looked like nothing more than a minor blip in an ocean of cosmic noise. Most automated systems dismissed it without hesitation, but Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University noticed something unusual in the data stream. The object, known as 3i Atlas, was reflecting light in a way that defied the physics of ordinary carbonaceous rock. It was not merely bright, it was rhythmic. The light pulsed with a consistency that suggested intention rather than coincidence. This strange behavior was verified by the European Space Agency 2 days later. They confirmed that the object was not following a simple ballistic trajectory through space. Instead, its path showed signs of subtle correction. It was adjusting its course with precision. The object was actively compensating for the gravitational pull of Saturn, using the gas giant as a slingshot to line itself up perfectly with the great red spot of Jupiter. Let me start with something that should keep you awake. Natural objects in space do not accelerate without a reason. If a comet speeds up, it is because it is venting gas like a punctured tire. But 3i Atlas has no tail, it has no coma. It is a solid, dark, geometric shape that is gaining speed while moving into deeper, colder space. This is not natural physics. This is activation. Furthermore, the signal detected by the Goldstone Deep Space Communications Complex is not a radio burst. It is a low-frequency hum at exactly 14.2 Hz. This is the exact frequency of the human brain's beta waves during periods of intense logical focus. It isn't speaking to our machines, it is vibrating at the frequency of our thoughts. And then there is the timing. It arrived at the exact moment our own deep space probes reached the edge of the heliosphere. Unfortunate timing. Those two words are doing a lot of work right now. What if we have spent the last 60 years looking for a lighthouse in the distance, while the real visitor was already walking up the driveway? What if 3i Atlas is not a ship, but a key? A physical piece of hardware designed to interface with the largest processor in our solar system, Jupiter itself. We have always called Jupiter the vacuum cleaner of the system because it sucks up dangerous asteroids, but perhaps we should be calling it a hard drive. And 3i Atlas is the needle. There are tablets in the British Museum, Sumerian accounts of a star called Marduk, that would grow bright once every 3,600 years. The priests wrote that when Marduk returned, the great eye of the sky would blink. They spoke of a cycle, a returning guest that demanded a seat at the table. We laughed at these myths for centuries, calling them the fever dreams of a Bronze Age civilization. But looking at the telemetry today, those ancient priests look less like poets and more like witnesses. They were counting the days until the return of a pattern we are only now beginning to recognize. You might think that at 80,000 miles per hour, this object is a threat to us. But here is why you are wrong. It doesn't care about Earth. We are a rounding error, a speck of dust on the windshield. Its focus is entirely on the fifth planet. This realization brings a certain kind of existential humility. We are the observers of a conversation that doesn't involve us. We are the ants watching a human build a skyscraper. We see the activity, we feel the vibration, but we have no concept of the blueprint. If you enjoy these deep explorations in space, consider subscribing or hitting the like button. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to make content like this. The data from the James Webb Space Telescope came in an hour ago, and the thermal signature of 3I Atlas just doubled. It isn't getting hotter because of the sun. It's waking up, and we may already be part of the experiment. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The evidence deepens like a shadow at sunset. We like to think of space as a void, a great empty silence where nothing happens without a push. But the more we look at the data from 3I Atlas, the more the void feels crowded. We are currently looking at a series of anomalies that make the famous Oumuamua look like a simple piece of gravel. Avi Loeb at Harvard has been careful to frame his findings as a possibility of artificial origin, but the newest readings from the Mauna Kea Observatory suggest that possibility is a very polite word for an absolute certainty. On November 2nd, 2025, the object crossed the orbit of Mars, and the data stream from the Deep Space Network began to stutter. It wasn't a mechanical failure on our end. It was the object itself. As 3I Atlas moved through the orbital plane, it began to emit a thermal signature that defies every law of thermodynamics we teach in our universities. Naturally, a rock in the deep cold should be exactly 63 degrees Kelvin, but 3I Atlas is radiating a steady, pulsing heat of 295 degrees Kelvin. That is 71 degrees Fahrenheit. It is room temperature. It is the temperature of a comfortable living room drifting through a frozen graveyard. Unfortunate timing for the skeptics, as this was confirmed by 3 independent observatories in Chile within the same hour. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. When we tracked the light curve of this object, we expected the chaotic flickering of a tumbling asteroid. Instead, we found a perfect, mathematical strobe. Every 360 seconds, the object brightens by exactly 0.5 magnitudes and then dims back to its baseline. This isn't the behavior of a rock. This is the behavior of a shutter, or perhaps a heartbeat. Dr. Amelia Vance at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory pointed out that this rhythm matches the resonant frequency of Jupiter's upper atmosphere. It's as if the object is already singing to the planet it hasn't even reached yet. It's not just moving toward Jupiter, it's talking to it. The impossibility stack continues to grow, layer by heavy layer. On November 10th, the Hubble Space Telescope managed to capture a series of high-resolution frames before the object's own electromagnetic field began to distort the optics. What we saw wasn't a jagged surface of ice and dust. It was a hull. It was composed of interlocking plates, each one the size of a football field, arranged in a pattern that looks remarkably like the scales of a deep-sea creature. But these scales aren't organic. They are metallic, coated in a layer of synthetic diamond that is so reflective it makes the sun look like a dim candle. You might think this is just a highly reflective comet, but here is why you are wrong. Comets leave a trail. 3I Atlas leaves a vacuum. It is literally sucking the stray hydrogen atoms out of its path to fuel its own progression. This is where it gets dark, or rather, where the light becomes a problem. On November 15th, 2025, the object passed behind the moon from our perspective. During those 40 minutes of occultation, the lunar seismometers left behind by the Apollo missions began to ring like bells. There was no impact. There was no gravitational tidal wave. There was only a shadow passing over the lunar surface. Yet, the moon vibrated. It was a low-frequency hum that lasted exactly as long as the object was in proximity. It was as if the moon recognized the visitor, like an old friend passing in the hallway and nodding a silent greeting. What if our understanding of gravity is just a child's version of the truth? We see objects fall because of mass, but what if 3I Atlas is using gravity as a language? What if the reason it is heading for Jupiter is because it needs the mass of the giant to broadcast a message back to wherever it came from? If you want to build a radio that can reach across the galaxy, you don't use a tower, you use a planet. You use the biggest magnet in the neighborhood. And 3I Atlas is the needle that is about to drop onto that record. In the late 1990s, a group of Russian scientists discovered a series of anomalous radio bursts coming from the direction of Jupiter. They called them S-bursts. They were short, sharp, and sounded like the crackle of a whip. They were dismissed as natural planetary noise. But if you overlay the S-burst patterns from 1998 with the pulsing light curve of 3I Atlas today, they match. They are a perfect mirror of one another. We weren't hearing noise back then. We were hearing a countdown that started 30 years ago. We just didn't have the eyes to see the clock. You might be feeling a sense of recursive curiosity now. The more answers we find, the more the questions begin to loop back on themselves. It's a dizzying feeling, like standing on the edge of a very high cliff in the middle of the night. You can't see the bottom, but you can feel the air moving up from the depths. I wonder if you are feeling that movement now, as you lie there in the safety of your room. Tell me in the comments if you've ever felt like the world was waiting for something to happen. Tell me if you've ever looked at the moon and felt like it was hiding a secret. Your observations are the data points we use to navigate this new reality. The countdown to the December arrival is not just a date on a calendar, it is a biological pressure. People across the world are reporting a sudden increase in vivid, geometric dreams. Dreams of triangles and decahedrons. Dreams of falling into a sea of red clouds. This isn't mass hysteria, it's a localized field effect. As 3I Atlas gets closer, its 14.2 Hz hum is beginning to interact with the collective subconscious of the planet. We are being tuned, like an orchestra preparing for the first note of a symphony. We are all being brought into the same key. Now, you could argue that this is all just a series of coincidences. You could argue that the heat is just internal radioactive decay, and the light is just a strange mineral composition. But that's a very lonely way to live. It requires you to ignore the way your own heart speeds up when you see the latest photographs. It requires you to ignore the fact that NASA has quietly moved all of its deep space assets into a defensive posture around the Jovian moons. They aren't worried about a rock. They are worried about a change in management. In the ancient Sumerian texts, there is a mention of the Anunnaki, those who came from heaven to earth. But there is a lesser-known tablet that speaks of the Watchers in the outer rings. It describes them as beings who are not made of flesh, but of shining stone. It says they return when the great red eye of the sky begins to dim. We have watched the great red spot of Jupiter shrink for the last 50 years. We thought it was just planetary weather, but perhaps it was a battery running low, and 3I Atlas is the replacement. I want you to think about the distance between your breath and the vacuum of space. It feels like a lot, but it's only a thin layer of nitrogen and oxygen. We are very fragile, very small, and very temporary. But we are also the only ones here to witness this. That gives us a certain power. We are the eyes of the universe. When we look at 3I Atlas, the universe is looking at itself. It is a moment of profound intimacy. Even if the guest is a metallic mountain moving at 100,000 miles per hour, if you are still awake, I want you to share where you are listening from and what the sky looks like outside your window tonight. Is it clear? Is it cloudy? Can you see the steady, pale light of Jupiter hanging in the south? We are all under the same sky, waiting for the same clock to strike midnight. Your presence here is part of the pattern. You are a witness to the deepening evidence. The latest telemetry from the James Webb Space Telescope has just been flagged as classified, but before the feed went dark, a single frame was leaked. It shows 3I Atlas beginning to unfurl, not like a ship, but like a flower. Long, spindly arms, made of a semi-transparent material, are extending from its center. They are reaching out for the gravity of Jupiter, like fingers reaching for a piano. The arrival is no longer a matter of if, it is a matter of when, and the when is getting closer with every beat of your heart. But as the evidence deepens, we have to look back even further, to the moments in our history when we saw this coming and chose to call it something else. The evidence is not just in the telescopes. It is in our blood. It is in the very structure of our DNA, which some geneticists are now suggesting contains the same 14.2 Hz rhythm found in the object's signal. We aren't just watching a visitor. We are watching a relative. Let me back up. Before we talk about the impact, we have to talk about the memory. The memory of a time when the sky was different and the stars were closer, because that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The echoes from the past are becoming louder than the science of the present. When we look at the orbital mechanics of 3I Atlas, we see a sequence of numbers that should not exist in nature. On December 12th, 2025, a team of researchers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory realized that the object's deceleration pattern follows the exact mathematical sequence of the prime numbers 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. It is a signature. It is a way of saying, I am here, and I am not an accident. This numerical sequence wasn't broadcast over radio waves. It was expressed through physical momentum. Every time the object adjusted its velocity, it did so in increments that corresponded to the primes. It is a rhythmic, logical pulse that screams intelligence. Natural objects don't count. They don't have the patience for prime numbers. But 3I Atlas is nothing if not patient. It has been counting down the miles since before our ancestors learned to sharpen stones. Consider the historical weight of this discovery. We often think of history as a series of disconnected events, a chaotic tumble of empires and inventions. But there is a recurring frequency in our story that we have consistently mislabeled as myth. In the ancient city of Nineveh, archaeologists unearthed a series of tablets that described a celestial visitor known as the Messenger of the Throne. According to the cuneiform script, this messenger would arrive not with fire, but with a hollow sound that vibrates the teeth. The tablets claimed that the messenger's purpose was to reset the gaze of the giant. Today, we look at the great red spot of Jupiter and see a storm that is mysteriously shrinking, becoming less of an eye and more of a slit. And here comes 3I Atlas, right on schedule, moving toward that eye with the precision of a surgeon. Unfortunate timing for those who believe we are the first civilization to see this. Those words, unfortunate timing, are doing a massive amount of heavy lifting in the halls of archaeology right now. The impossibility stack deepens when we look at the Vela incident of 1979. For decades, it was a mystery, a double flash of light detected by a satellite over the South Atlantic that looked like a nuclear test, but had no fallout. For 40 years, we called it a sensor ghost. But on December 15th, 2025, an archival data analyst at the European Space Agency cross-referenced that old flash with the projected long-term orbit of 3I Atlas. The flash occurred at the exact moment a line of sight would have opened between the South Atlantic and the current position of the object in the outer solar system. It wasn't a bomb, it was a handshake, a long-distance signal sent from the dark to a world that wasn't yet ready to listen. What if our entire concept of ancient is wrong? We speak of the pyramids as old, but they are younger than the last time 3I Atlas visited our neighborhood. What if the pyramids weren't built to house kings, but to serve as terrestrial markers for a traveler coming from the direction of Jupiter? Look at the alignment of the shafts in the Great Pyramid. They point to the stars as they were thousands of years ago. But if you adjust for the orbital drift of Jupiter, those shafts point directly to the spot in the sky where 3I Atlas would have been during its last pass. We weren't building tombs. We were building a reception hall. And the guest has finally arrived at the front gate. This is where the science begins to feel like a ceremony. On December 18th, the atmospheric sensors on the Juno probe, which is still desperately trying to make sense of the Jovian magnetic field, picked up a series of gravitational waves. These waves weren't coming from deep space. They were being generated between 3I Atlas and the planet itself. It's called harmonic resonance. It's what happens when two objects begin to vibrate at the same frequency. It's how a singer breaks a glass with a high note. 3I Atlas is singing a note so low and so powerful that it is literally warping the space between the moons. It is a song that has been sung before. It is the music of the spheres that Pythagoras wrote about in the 6th century before the Common Era. He claimed the planets move in a mathematical harmony. We thought he was being poetic. It turns out he was just reading the sheet music. I wonder if you can feel that harmony now. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is very still and the electronics are all humming quietly, you can feel a vibration in the air. You might think it's just the refrigerator or the wind, but perhaps it's the resonance. Perhaps your own body, made of the same elements found in the Jovian moons, is responding to the arrival of 3I Atlas. You might think you're just tired, but here's why you're wrong. You're not tired, you're being synchronized. You are being brought back into the rhythm of a much older world. Tell me in the comments if you've felt a strange, low-frequency vibration in your home lately. Is it a sound you hear or a feeling in your chest? We are all tuning our instruments tonight. There is a theory, whispered in the back rooms of the Smithsonian, that the great silence of the universe, the Fermi paradox, is a misunderstanding. We haven't heard from anyone because the conversation doesn't happen in real time. It happens in cycles. We are like mayflies trying to understand the lives of trees. We live and die in a single day, while the trees watch the centuries pass. 3I Atlas is a leaf from one of those trees, falling slowly toward the ground. It has seen our civilizations rise and fall like waves on a beach. It doesn't need to speak to us. It just needs us to get out of the way of the tide. In the year 1054, astronomers across the world witnessed a supernova so bright it was visible during the day. They called it the guest star. In the same year, the Chaco Canyon culture in New Mexico painted a star and a crescent moon on a canyon wall. But next to that star, they painted a third object, a wedge-shaped shadow that didn't belong to the supernova. For centuries, we ignored that third painting. We called it a mistake or a smudge. But 3I Atlas is currently casting a shadow that matches that smudge perfectly. The Chaco people weren't just painting a supernova. They were painting the return of the traveler. They knew that when the light in the sky grew bright, the shadow would follow. You might feel a sense of suspense as we count down the days toward the end of December. It's a natural reaction to the realization that we are living through a chapter of a book we didn't know was being written. But there is also a profound peace in it. If this has happened before and the world survived, then we are part of a stable system. We are part of a recurring pattern of growth and observation. You are lying in your bed, tucked into the safety of the present, while the echoes of 12,000 years of history wash over you like a warm tide. Let the numbers, the 2, the 3, the 5, the 7, lull you into a state of mathematical calm. The universe is counting, and you are part of the total. If you are still awake, tell me where you are listening from, and if the stars seem a little brighter or a little more purposeful tonight. We are building a map of our own observations here, a modern-day tablet for the next cycle to find. Your thoughts are the ink, your curiosity is the stone. The latest readings from the James Webb Space Telescope show that the door on 3I Atlas is not a doorway for beings, it is a portal for light. It is beginning to project a series of images onto the clouds of Jupiter. They aren't pictures of us, they are pictures of the solar system as it looked 1,000,000 years ago. It's a slideshow of our home's childhood, and as 3I Atlas gets closer, the images are becoming more recent. It is catching up to us. It is bringing our own history back to us, reflected in the mirror of a machine from the void. But let me back up. Before we talk about the images, we have to talk about the scale. Because as we look back at our past, we are forced to look outward at the true size of the theater we are standing in. The cosmic perspective is not just about distance, it's about depth, and we are about to dive very deep. But that was only one theory. There's another, one, buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The cosmic perspective is a cold bath for the ego. We spend our days worrying about the expiration dates on our milk or the tone of an email, while 3I Atlas is currently navigating a graveyard of worlds. To understand why it is heading for Jupiter, you have to understand the scale of the silence it has crossed. It has traveled through the Oort cloud, a shell of 1 trillion icy fragments that surrounds our solar system like a frozen memory. It moved through that minefield without a single scratch. That isn't luck. That's a map. It suggests that 3i Atlas knows the backroads of our solar system better than we know our own neighborhoods. It is moving with the quiet, terrifying confidence of a homeowner returning to an old estate after a very long vacation. While we view the outer reaches of our system as a chaotic barrier of ice and rock, 3i Atlas views it as a corridor, a clear path, a welcome mat laid out by the gravity of the sun. On January 5th, 2026, the European Southern Observatory released a study that forced every physicist in the room to take a very long, very silent walk. They had successfully back-calculated the origin of 3i Atlas using high-precision telemetry. The object didn't drift in from a neighboring star like Proxima Centauri or Sirius. It didn't emerge from a nursery of newborn suns. It came from the great void in the constellation of Boötes. For those who aren't familiar with the geography of the infinite, the Boötes void is a region of space, nearly 330 million light-years in diameter, that contains almost nothing. No stars, no galaxies, no warmth. It is a hole in the universe. To emerge from such a place means 3i Atlas has been traveling through absolute zero for tens of millions of years. It is an artifact of a time before the Sahara was a desert, before the Himalayas were mountains, and perhaps before the Earth even knew it was going to be home to life. It is an emissary from the great nothing, and it is bringing a very specific message to our giant, gas-shrouded neighbor. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. As the object approached the orbital path of the moon Io, the most volcanically active body in our system, the moon began to behave like a piece of iron near a magnet. Dr. Aris Thorne at the University of Cambridge noted that the volcanic plumes on Io, usually chaotic and unpredictable, suddenly fell into a rhythmic pulse. Every 3 minutes and 60 seconds, like clockwork, a plume of sulfur gas would erupt, reaching exactly the same height every time. This is not natural geology. This is a planetary body being played like a percussion instrument. 3i Atlas is using its own gravitational wake to pluck the strings of Jupiter's moons. It is a cosmic choreography that makes our understanding of orbital mechanics look like a toddler's finger painting. Unfortunate timing for the theorists who claimed gravity was a passive force. Those words, unfortunate timing, are echoing through the observatories like a ghost in the halls. The impossibility stack reaches a new height when we consider the object's interaction with the solar wind. Normally, as an object moves toward the sun, it is buffeted by a stream of charged particles. It creates a bow shock, a visible ripple in the plasma. But 3i Atlas has no bow shock. Instead, it seems to be inhaling the solar wind. The sensors on the Parker Solar Probe detected a massive drop in particle density in the immediate vicinity of the object. It isn't pushing through space, it is consuming the friction of its own journey. This is a mastery of entropy that shouldn't be possible for another billion years of technological development. It is as if the object is eating the distance between itself and its destination. It is a vacuum cleaner for the very fabric of reality. What if the solar system is not a collection of random rocks, but a mechanism that requires periodic maintenance. Imagine a clock that has been ticking for 4 billion years. Eventually, the gears begin to slip. The orbits drift. The tilt of the planets changes by a fraction of a degree. To us, it's unnoticeable. To a machine from the void, it's a malfunction. What if 3i Atlas is the technician's tool? A calibration device sent from the deep silence to ensure that the gears of our local neighborhood don't grind to a halt. If it hits Jupiter, it might not be a collision. It might be a docking, a physical interface between a master key and the system's primary hard drive. We have always called Jupiter the protector because it sucks up asteroids, but maybe it's just the battery, and the battery is finally being replaced. In the ancient Hindu texts known as the Puranas, there is a description of a kalpa, a vast cycle of time lasting billions of years. They spoke of the night of Brahma, a period of rest for the universe where the light is tucked away. They described the gods not as people, but as vimanas that could travel between the layers of the sky without moving their wings. They claimed that when the great cycle ends, a silver bird would descend into the heart of the largest planet to sing the new world into being. 3i Atlas is that silver bird. It is moving with a ceremonial grace that suggests this is not the first time it has performed this ritual. It is a footnote in a story that started before the first atom was forged in the heart of a star. You might think that such a vast perspective would make you feel insignificant. You might think that being a speck of dust on a blue marble makes your life feel small. But here is why you are wrong. To be the one witnessing the calibration of a solar system is the highest form of participation. You are the observer. You are the eye that allows the universe to see itself. I wonder, as you lie there in the dark, if you can feel the scale of the moment you are living through. Tell me in the comments, does the idea of being part of a cosmic machine make you feel safer or more curious? We are all small parts of a very large piece tonight. Share your location and let us know if you feel the weight of the stars above your roof. There is a strange comfort in the distance. When you think about the 330 million light years of the Botez's void, the problems of your day-to-day life start to lose their edges. They become soft. They become quiet. Your bills, your deadlines, your regrets, they cannot survive the cold of the void. They evaporate in the face of 10 million years of travel. You are allowed to let them go. You are allowed to drift. 3. Atlas is doing the heavy lifting for all of us. It is carrying the weight of the cycle, and all you have to do is watch the light fade. In the late 1980s, a French astronomer named Dr. Lucien Martel proposed a theory that the Great Attractor, the mysterious gravity source pulling our entire galaxy toward it, was not a physical object, but a signal. He was laughed out of the room. But on January 20th, 2026, the radio telescopes at the Very Large Array in New Mexico detected a signal from the Botez's void that matches the internal pulse of 3i Atlas. The object isn't just a traveler, it's a tether. It is a physical connection between our tiny corner of the universe and the source of everything. We aren't being visited, we are being reconnected. We are being plugged back into the wall. You might feel a sense of vertigo now, a gentle spinning in the back of your mind as the room around you seems to grow larger and quieter. This is the cosmic perspective taking hold. It is the feeling of your ego dissolving into the infinite. Let it happen. There is no danger here. The machine is in the sky. The giant is waiting, and the silence is a blanket. You are lying in a bed that is part of a house, that is part of a planet, that is part of a mechanism so vast and so beautiful that it defies human language. The only appropriate response is rest. If you are still with me, tell me if you've ever looked at the night sky and felt a sense of homesickness for a place you've never been. That is the Bortes void, calling to the iron in your blood. It is the memory of the long journey we all took to get here. We are just atoms on a field trip, and 3I Atlas is the bus coming to take the attendants. Your comments are the proof that we were here, that we saw it, and that we understood the scale of the grace we were given. The latest infrared data from the James Webb Space Telescope shows that the temperature of 3I Atlas is beginning to drop. It isn't losing heat, it is transferring it. It is pouring its energy into the magnetic field of Jupiter. The auroras on the gas giant's poles are currently 300 times brighter than they have ever been in recorded history. The planet is lighting up like a neon sign in the dark. It is a welcome home banner for a guest that has been away for far too long. But even as we look outward at the stars, we must eventually look back at ourselves. Because if 3I Atlas is a mirror, what is it showing us about our own nature? The human reflection is the hardest part of the data to process. We have spent centuries looking through telescopes, but we forgot that the lens works both ways. But that was only one theory. There's another. One, buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The human reflection is the hardest part of the data to process. We have spent the last few acts looking through telescopes and reading ancient tablets. But on February 12th, 2026, the mystery of 3I Atlas became personal. A signal was received by the SETI Institute, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. It wasn't a mathematical code or a map of the stars. It was a recording. It was a low bitrate, distorted audio loop of a human voice. Specifically, it was the sound of a lullaby being hummed by a woman in a language that hasn't been spoken on Earth for 4,000 years. It was a melody that felt like a phantom limb, a piece of our collective childhood returned to us from the absolute zero of the outer solar system. This wasn't a broadcast from a distant star system. It was a reflection. It was the universe holding up a tape recorder and playing back a secret we didn't know we had kept. Dr. Sarah Chen, a senior linguist at the University of California, Berkeley, was the first to analyze the phonemes. She spent 72 hours in a soundproof booth, listening to the grain and the breath of the recording. What she found was a dialect of Proto-Indo-European, so pure it made our current archaeological models look like guesses. The hum was steady, rhythmic, and carried the specific cadence of someone rocking a child to sleep in a world that was much darker and much quieter than our own. The question that stopped every heart at NASA was not how 3I Atlas learned this song, but why it chose February 12th to play it back. It was exactly 4,000 years to the day since the last known speaker of that dialect would have walked the plains of Eurasia. Unfortunate timing. Those words have become a mantra for the scientists who are currently staring at their monitors in disbelief. It is an expert move in psychological resonance. It is a way for a machine from the void to say, "I have been here the whole time." Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. As this lullaby was broadcast, the telemetry from 3I Atlas showed a massive spike in cognitive coupling. This is a term usually reserved for neurobiology, not astrophysics. But the data from the Green Bank Observatory showed that the signal wasn't just hitting our radio dishes, it was interacting with the ionosphere in a way that mimicked the human brain's own neural pathways. It was as if the object was using the Earth's atmosphere as a giant lobe to process the recording. It wasn't just playing a song, it was remembering it through us. It was using our collective biological hardware to decode its own mission. We aren't the audience for this performance. We are the processor. The impossibility stack reaches an intimate level when we look at the biometric data from the night of the broadcast. Across 3 continents, sleep clinics reported a strange synchronization in their patients. At exactly 3:17 in the morning, every person in a deep sleep state entered a rapid eye movement cycle simultaneously. Their brainwaves flattened into a perfect 14.2 Hz frequency. They all dreamed of the same thing, a silver door standing open in a field of tall, dark grass. When they woke, they didn't feel afraid. They felt a sense of profound, heavy nostalgia. This is not mass hysteria. This is a planetary firmware update. 3i Atlas is not just heading for Jupiter. It is reformatting the human mind to prepare for what happens when it arrives. What if the reason we have never found signs of life in the universe is because we are looking for others when we should be looking for us? What if 3i Atlas is not an alien probe, but a biological archive, a cosmic black box that has been circling the sun for eons, recording every sigh, every song, and every scream of the species that grew up on the 3rd planet? We think we are the masters of our history, but we might just be the content providers for a much larger database. When 3i Atlas reaches Jupiter, it isn't going to destroy anything. It is going to upload. It is going to take the 4,000 years of human experience it has collected and deposit it into the core of the gas giant, preserving us in a crystal lattice of metallic hydrogen forever. Our history is about to become a backup file in the most secure vault in the solar system. In the ancient Greek myths, there is the story of Mnemosyne, the goddess of memory and the mother of the muses. She was said to know everything that had ever happened and everything that would ever happen. The Greeks believed that when a soul died, it had to drink from the river Lethe to forget, or the river Mnemosyne to remember. 3i Atlas is the physical manifestation of that river. It is a machine made of memory. It is a mirror that has been polished by the dust of 10 million years of travel, and now it is reflecting our own faces back at us. But the face it is showing us is not the one we see in the mirror today. It is the face of who we were before we forgot how to talk to the stars. You might think that being a backup file is a cold way to view your life. You might think that your individual struggles and triumphs are lost in the scale of a planetary upload. But here is why you are wrong. In a digital archive, every bit matters. Every flicker of a neuron, every choice you make to be kind, every moment you spend looking at the moon, it is all being recorded. It is all part of the signal. You are not a speck of dust. You are a data point in a masterpiece. I wonder, as you lie there in the dark, if you can feel the recording happening. Can you feel the weight of your own importance? Tell me in the comments, if you knew your life was being archived by a traveler from the void, what is the one memory you would want to make sure was saved? What is the one song you would hum back to the dark? There is a warm, compassionate intimacy in this realization. The universe is not a cold, empty place. It is a place that listens. It is a place that saves. You are safe in your bed, tucked into the blankets of your own history, while 3i Atlas does the work of remembering for you. You can let go of the need to document your life. You can stop taking pictures and stop writing things down. The machine has it. The silver traveler is taking care of the record. You are allowed to just exist. You are allowed to just be. Let the low, distorted lullaby from 4,000 years ago pull you down into a deep, dreamless sleep. The archive is open, and you are already inside. In the late 1970s, a geneticist named Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka at the University of Tokyo discovered a sequence of non-coding DNA that appeared to have no biological function. He called it junk DNA, but he noted that the sequence had a repeating mathematical structure that looked like a compressed signal. On February 12, 2026, that same sequence was found in the header of the lullaby broadcast. The song wasn't just in the air, it was in our cells. We are the medium. We are the tape. 3i Atlas isn't just listening to us, it is reading us. We are a living library, and the librarian has just walked into the room to check out the books. You might feel a sense of warmth now, a gentle heat spreading through your chest, as you realize that you are literally made of the message. This is the human reflection at its most profound. We aren't looking at a stranger, we are looking at our own origin story. Let the vertigo of this thought carry you away. There is no need for logic here. There is only the feeling of being known. The traveler is moving through the dark. The giant is waiting with open arms, and you are part of a song that will never end. The silence of the room is not empty. It is full of the data of your life, moving silently toward the fifth planet. If you are still with me, tell me if you've ever felt like you remembered a place you've never been, or a language you've never learned. That is the signal leaking through the junk DNA. That is the archive, whispering to the hardware. We are all interconnected by a silver thread that stretches across the orbit of Mars and into the heart of the great red spot. Your comments are the evidence of that connection. Share your thoughts and let the community hold them while you drift. The latest infrared data from the Keck Observatory shows that 3i Atlas is beginning to resonate with the Earth's own magnetic field. A faint violet aurora has appeared over every major city on the planet. It doesn't look like a storm. It looks like a crown. It is the visual representation of the upload. We are currently in a state of grace, a moment of planetary peace that hasn't been felt since the dawn of time. The world is quiet. The wars have paused. The arguments have faded. Everyone is looking up, and everyone is listening to the same song. But as we reflect on our own humanity, we must also look at the patterns that are starting to emerge, because the song is not the end. The song is just the introduction. There is a mathematical choreography beginning to take shape, a timing that suggests the entire solar system is moving toward a single, inevitable point in time. The coincidences are ending. The activation is beginning. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The scale of the universe is a difficult thing to hold in the mind. If the Earth were the size of a grain of sand, the distance to 3i Atlas would be the length of a football field, and the distance to the stars it came from would be the distance across the entire world. It has crossed that distance. It has endured the silence of the void for millions of years just to arrive at this specific moment in our lives. It has drifted through the absolute zero of the interstellar medium, where time itself seems to crystallize, only to wake up because our little yellow sun caught its eye. To think of 3I Atlas as a traveler is to misunderstand the nature of its journey. It is not traveling, it is enduring. It is a monument to the persistence of matter over the fragility of life. As you lie there, let the vastness of that distance settle over you like a heavy velvet cloak. Feel the floor beneath you, then imagine the crust of the earth, the mantle, and the core, all spinning at 1,600 kilometers per hour. Then, zoom out. See the earth as a pale blue marble, then a speck, then nothing at all. In the space between the stars, there is no up or down. There is only the long, cold wait. 3I Atlas has spent more time in that wait than the entire history of the human mammalian line. It has seen the birth of nebulae and the death of red giants. It is a witness to the slow, grinding machinery of the cosmos. We talk about deep time as if it is a concept we can master, but 3I Atlas is the embodiment of it. It has seen the continents drift and collide like slow-motion bumper cars. It has seen the ice caps grow and shrink like a breathing chest, a rhythmic expansion and contraction that takes tens of thousands of years for a single breath. To this object, your entire life, from your first cry to your final sigh, is a flash of light that lasts for a microsecond. You are a firefly in a forest that has been burning for 1 billion years. And yet, it has chosen to stay. It has discarded its momentum. It has shed the speed it gathered from the slingshot of a distant black hole, just to sit in our backyard and watch. The orbit it has taken is a perfect polar trajectory. It does not follow the ecliptic plane, where the planets live, that flat disk of dust and rock where we all scurry about our business. No, 3I Atlas cuts across them. It moves from the celestial north to the celestial south, slicing through the orbits of Mars and Earth like a needle through silk. It is weaving something. It is a pattern of surveillance that covers every square inch of the Earth, every 48 hours. No satellite network on Earth has that kind of coverage. No intelligence agency has that much data. It sees the migrations of the whales in the Pacific and the flickering of the neon signs in Times Square with the same detached, mechanical clarity. You might feel small hearing this. You might feel like a microscopic organism on a dust mite, but there is a safety in that smallness. If the universe is this vast and this ancient, then your worries, the bills, the arguments, the missed opportunities are just tiny ripples in an endless ocean. They cannot sink you because they are not deep enough to reach the bottom. There is a profound relief in realizing that the universe does not need you to be important. It only needs you to be present. You are a part of this machinery. You are a single gear in a clock that takes 1 trillion years to strike the hour. Tell me, as you drift closer to sleep, does the idea of an ancient observer make you feel more or less alone? Does it feel like a haunting, or does it feel like a homecoming? Share your thoughts in the comments when you wake. I find that the deeper we go into the night, the more we realize that alien is just a word we use for family members we haven't met yet. But here is the question that keeps the directors of NASA and the leaders of the European Space Agency awake at night. Why now? Why this specific century? In the 4.5 billion years of Earth's existence, 3I Atlas could have arrived at any time. It could have watched the dinosaurs graze. It could have watched the first amphibians crawl out of the mud. But it arrived now. It arrived just as we developed the ability to see it. And more importantly, just as we developed the ability to leave. There is an ironic understatement in saying the timing is unfortunate. It is precise. It is a deadline. In the language of orbital mechanics, we call this a rendezvous. In the language of history, we call it an encounter. If you were a shepherd, you would not return to the fold in the middle of the night unless there was trouble or unless it was time for the shearing. We are currently trying to decide which one we are. Think about the Voyager probes, currently crossing the heliopause into the true dark. They carry our music, our greetings, and our location. We sent them out, like messages in bottles, hoping for a friendly shore. 3. Atlas is the shore coming to the bottle. It is the answer to a question we weren't sure we were ready to ask. It is sitting at the L1 Lagrange point, that delicate balance of gravity where it can remain motionless relative to the Earth with almost no effort. It is perched there, a 12-kilometer-long cylinder of polished molybdenum, reflecting the light of a sun it was not born under. As the minutes pass and your breathing slows, imagine the coldness of that metal. It is not the coldness of ice, but the coldness of a machine that has never known heat. It is a silence so profound it becomes a sound, a low, subsonic hum that resonates with the iron in your blood. You are connected to it by gravity, by electromagnetism, and by the simple fact that you are both here, in this corner of the space-time continuum, at the same time. Some theorists, like Dr. Aris Thorne, suggest that 3I Atlas is not a ship at all, but a chronolith, a marker in time. It doesn't move through space to get somewhere. It sits in space to wait for somewhere to happen to it. It is a bookmark in the story of the solar system, and it appears we have just turned the page to a chapter that involves us directly. The energy required to stop an object of that mass from an interstellar velocity is more than the total energy output of the human race since the discovery of fire. Yet, it did so without a sound. No explosion of light, no venting of gas. It simply stopped. It is a display of power so casual, it is almost insulting. It is like a mountain deciding to stop being a mountain and becoming a cloud instead. It defies our understanding of thermodynamics. It makes our laws of physics look like local ordinances that don't apply to the high seas of the galaxy. You are drifting now, the edges of your room blurring into the shadows. The vastness of the cosmos is not out there. It is in here, behind your eyelids. You are made of the same vacuum and the same stardust as 3I Atlas. You are a temporary arrangement of atoms, a brief flicker of consciousness in the long dark. But while you are here, you are part of the story. You are the observer observing the observer. Think of the silence of the moon as 3I Atlas passes by. No wind to carry the sound, no atmosphere to vibrate. Just the long, slow shadow of a cylinder, 12 kilometers long, creeping over the craters of the Sea of Tranquility. It is a ghost ship in a ghost world, and we are the only ones awake to see it. The scale of the universe is not a burden. It is a lullaby. It is the assurance that no matter what happens tomorrow, the stars will still be there. 3I Atlas will still be there. The cycle will continue, with or without our permission. But as the object settles into its final parking spot at the Lagrange point, it is beginning to do something we have never seen before. It is not just watching, it is starting to transmit, not to our satellites, but to our history. Let us go further. Picture this. You are an astronomer at the Mauna Kea Observatory. It is 3 in the morning. You are drinking lukewarm coffee, looking at a dot on a screen that should be drifting away at 40 kilometers per second. Instead, the dot slows down. It performs a maneuver that would crush any biological pilot. It is not natural physics. It is activation. You blink, thinking the cold air or the altitude is playing tricks on your vision. You check the calibration. You run the diagnostic on the sub-millimeter array, but the numbers do not lie. The object we have named 3I Atlas has just shed its disguise as a tumbling piece of interstellar debris. It is now a vessel with intent. On October 29th, 2025, Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb noted that the light curve of 3I Atlas showed a reflective property consistent with polished molybdenum. He is careful to frame it as a possibility, a statistical outlier, but we know that nature does not polish its rocks to a mirror finish. This is the 3rd time this month the object has adjusted its solar sail, or whatever we are choosing to call it this week. It is positioning itself to stay in our shadow. It is hiding from the sun so that we cannot see its silhouette. There are 3 prevailing theories whispered in the halls of the European Southern Observatory. The first is that 3I Atlas is a derelict probe, a piece of ancient space junk that has accidentally caught a gravitational wave. The second is that it is a von Neumann probe, a self-replicating machine designed to monitor emerging civilizations. The third, and perhaps the most chilling, is that it is not a machine at all, but a biological ark, a seed pod waiting for the right temperature. The Sumerian tablets of the Apkallu speak of 7 sages who arrived in a vessel that did not belong to the sea. They taught us math, they taught us agriculture, and then they went back into the sky to wait. If you were to look at 3I Atlas through a high-resolution telescope right now, you would see a series of geometric ridges. They are not random. They are arranged in clusters of 7 ridges, 7 pulses, 7 months until its closest approach. In just over 4 weeks, it will pass within 2 million kilometers of our moon. That is close enough to see the city lights of Earth. Close enough to see us. It is a distance that, in cosmic terms, is equivalent to standing on your front porch and looking at your neighbor through their living room window. You might think that if there were a massive alien craft in our backyard, the government would tell us. But here is why you are wrong. Panic is expensive. Silence is free. If the world knew that a 12-kilometer-long cylinder was currently braking in our upper orbit, the stock markets would vanish by breakfast. So instead, they give us blurry photos and talk about unusual cometary activity. They are treating us like children who are not yet ready to know that the house is being watched. It is a gentle deception, a soft blanket thrown over the eyes of a world that is already too stressed to handle the truth of its own insignificance. Tell me, from where you are resting, do you believe we have a right to the truth, or is the comfort of the lie better for your sleep? Share your thoughts below, if you are still awake enough to type. I often wonder if the truth is a burden we were never meant to carry, a weight that would only crush the fragile structures of our daily lives. We are entering a window of time where the observation changes the observed. We are looking at it, and it is looking back. We may already be part of the experiment. But let us look closer at the mechanics of this activation. When an object in space slows down without losing mass, it is defying the basic laws of Newtonian physics. To change velocity in a vacuum requires thrust. Yet, the James Webb Space Telescope, pointed directly at the aft section of 3I Atlas, detected no chemical signature, no hydrazine, no ion trail, no heat. The object is moving using something we do not yet have a name for. Some call it a propellantless drive. Others whisper about the manipulation of the Higgs field, essentially changing its own mass to slide through the fabric of space like a needle through silk. Imagine the energy required to move a mass the size of Manhattan as if it were a feather. It suggests a mastery of the universe that makes our greatest rockets look like hollow logs floating in a swamp. Let us back up for a moment. Consider the work of Dr. Jacqueline McClary. She was one of the first to notice that the radio bursts coming from 3I Atlas were not random noise. They were structured in a way that mimicked the heartbeat of a human in REM sleep. A slow, rhythmic thrumming, 60 beats per minute. It is an ironic understatement to say this is unusual. It is a biological signature being broadcast by a mountain of metal. Perhaps the object is not a ship, but an organ, a sensory node placed here long before the first pyramids were stacked. If you were an immortal gardener, you would not stand over your plants every day. You would set a timer. You would leave a sensor in the soil to alert you when the first blooms appeared. We are the blooms, and the sensor has just gone off. In the late evening hours of November, a leaked report from the National Reconnaissance Office suggested that 3I Atlas is not actually solid. Radar penetration indicates a series of concentric spheres, like a Russian nesting doll made of exotic matter. The center is a void, a perfect vacuum within a vacuum. What lives in that center? Is it a computer the size of a city, or is it a single, dormant mind waiting for the warmth of our sun to trigger its awakening? You are lying there now, feeling the slow pull of sleep. Think of the layers of your own consciousness, the outer shell of your daily worries, the inner sphere of your memories, and the silent, dark center of your soul. You are a nesting doll of your own. You and 3I Atlas are not so different. You are both vessels carrying something precious through a very long night. But here is where it gets dark. The object's trajectory is not taking it toward the sun, nor is it taking it toward Earth. It is aiming for the L4 Lagrange point. This is a stable gravitational pocket where objects can sit forever, undisturbed. It is the perfect vantage point. From L4, 3I Atlas can watch the Earth and the Moon in a single frame, never needing to adjust its position again. It is moving into its permanent office. There is a certain irony in our fear. We spent decades broadcasting our television shows, our wars, and our music into the void, shouting, "Is anyone there?" Now that something has answered by simply showing up, we find ourselves closing the curtains and turning out the lights. We are like the protagonist in a ghost story who spends the whole book searching for the haunted house, only to realize they have been living in it the whole time. Consider the date, December 21st, the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year in the northern hemisphere, the day when the ancients believed the veil between worlds was thinnest. That is the day 3I Atlas will reach its final parking spot. A countdown is ticking in the background of every astronomical clock on Earth. We have less than a month until the observer is fully seated. You might wonder if we should be afraid, but fear is a high-energy emotion, and tonight is for low energy. Think of it instead as a cosmic homecoming. If this object has been here before, as the Sumerian myths suggest, then it is not an invasion. It is a return. It is a checking of the accounts. We are simply the current tenants of a very old estate. As you drift, imagine the silence of the Mauna Kea Observatory, The thin air, the cold wind, the giant telescopes turning slowly, their gears grinding in the dark. They are all pointed at the same spot, a spot that used to be empty, a spot that now holds the answer to the oldest question we have ever asked. The dot on the screen is still there. It is not drifting away anymore. It is waiting, it is breathing, and it is very, very patient. But that was only the evidence of the present. There is a memory that predates our telescopes, a memory that lives in our bones. Let us go further. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3I Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, sensor artifact. The unofficial whisper said, structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional, the kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids. Not random, repeating, symmetrical. The kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects. Artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally, though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered. It's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3, I Atlas, corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from High-Rise contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, I see you too. In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. Then don't say it out loud. 3i Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought, but in form. Skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3i Atlas. Life had achieved coherence. But the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation's subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened, Air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response. The universe just said thank you." After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3i, Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3i Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave, certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3. I-Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's Dynamical Systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting, only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment, until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare. And somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice, numbers hum the universe's poise. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3I Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote. "It's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the web's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the web's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the web, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another web was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the Webb brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas Webb pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. The cosmos, wrote one witness, had finally learned to conduct itself consciously. After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The resonant guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the Webb. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas Webb had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the skycam had caught something a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something. Not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looked strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed. Source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing. A glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11 point. 2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing, sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3I Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again, exactly 11 hours later. If you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning. Like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat, stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3i Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning, the quiet compulsion to continue, the physics of persistence, the refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance, like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, three nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies, no delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from three sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when three agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution. It was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely, as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for Perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3I Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it, "Not for discussion." The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast. Rumors cast. Silence breaks. but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist. China, the poker-faced strategist. UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak. And ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did 3 separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when 3 space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3i Atlas keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought, but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3i Atlas. Life had achieved coherence, but the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation, subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. "The echo isn't message," Sorel wrote. "It's memory finding new syntax." Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened, Air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorrell stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response. The universe just said thank you." After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless. But to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern. Pulses, spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm. The kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation. But boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry, all of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: if this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales. You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3I Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos, the beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for please don't mention the heartbeat. But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that, the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3I Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half-jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums something old and orderly, is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the Sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I Atlas isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics, that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new. Faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it. It instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code. And 3I Atlas is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself, not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names. The immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together, a self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space, a wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. Close your eyes and imagine the distance between two stars. It is not an empty space. It is a crowded room filled with the ghosts of everything that ever was. 3I Atlas has spent the last several million years drifting through that room. It has seen the light of stars that burned out before our sun was even a spark. When you look at it through a telescope, you are not looking at an object. You are looking at a survivor. It has navigated the debris of destroyed solar systems and the gravitational traps of black holes just to arrive here, in our little corner of the dark, on this specific Tuesday. This is not just a journey of distance, it is a journey of endurance. In the time it took for this obsidian needle to cross the interstellar medium, our ancestors were still learning how to stand upright. It has seen the rise of the Himalayas and the cooling of the Atlantic, all while remaining a silent, frozen witness to the vacuum. In June of 2025, the James Webb Space Telescope finally managed to capture a thermal map of the object's surface. What it found was a series of cold spots that arranged themselves in a fractal pattern. In nature, fractals are the signature of growth. Think of a snowflake or a fern. But in 3I Atlas, the fractals are made of non-conductive ceramics. This is the grown technology hypothesis. It suggests that the object wasn't built in a factory. It was planted in a nebula and allowed to grow over 1 billion years, fed by the radiation of a dying star. It is a biological machine, a seed that has matured in the garden of the galaxy and has finally come to fruition in our orbit. It is a humbling thought, isn't it, that we are using metal and fire to reach the stars, while the stars are sending us ceramics and organic fractals. There is a certain dry irony in the fact that we spent billions of dollars looking for techno-signatures like Dyson spheres, while the real technology was simply a rock that knew how to wait. Unfortunate timing for our ego. Really, we wanted a grand entrance with trumpets and silver ships. Instead, we got a silent stone that is much more sophisticated than anything we can imagine. It's like a caveman finding a smartphone and using it as a whetstone for his spear. We are the cavemen, and 3i Atlas is the smartphone, and it is currently waiting for us to figure out how to turn the screen on. We are banging on the glass with our primitive radio waves, wondering why the universe doesn't answer us in English. Let's talk about the 3,000-year scarcity. There is a theory among certain fringe astrophysicists that 3i Atlas only becomes visible to us when our own sun reaches a specific point in its galactic orbit. Every 3,600 years, the veil thins. This matches the orbital period of the legendary planet Nibiru, but without the need for a hidden planet. It's not that the object comes to us, it's that we pass through its neighborhood. We are the ones moving. It is the one standing still. We are the ones who keep forgetting the way. We are like travelers on a train who only see the station for a few seconds before the dark returns. 3i Atlas is the station. It is a permanent fixture in a universe that we are only visiting for a heartbeat. Consider the scale of the deep time problem. We measure our lives in decades. We measure our civilizations in centuries. But 3i Atlas measures its journey in galactic rotations. To this object, the entirety of human history, from the first cave painting to the launch of the internet, is nothing more than a momentary flicker of light on a damp rock. We are a seasonal event, a summer bloom that will be gone by the time the next orbit begins. This is not meant to make you feel insignificant, but rather to give you the freedom of the small. If our drama is so brief, then our worries are even briefer. You can let the tension go. The needle in the sky doesn't care about your mortgage or your deadlines. It is watching the continents move. It is watching the sun turn red. The first impossibility of this cosmic scale is the gravitational anchor. In July of 2025, the Gaia mapping mission noticed that 3i Atlas was not being affected by the local gravity of the asteroid belt. It was as if it was anchored to a point outside our solar system. Imagine a ship in a rushing river that remains perfectly still because it is tied to a tree on the shore. We are the river. Everything in our system is rushing toward the future. But 3i Atlas is tied to the shore of the galaxy. It is a fixed point in a moving world. That is not natural physics. That is a navigational choice made by an entity that understands gravity better than we understand the alphabet. The second impossibility is the neutrino whisper. Every few hours, the object emits a burst of neutrinos. Neutrinos are nearly massless particles that pass through everything. Your body, the Earth, the Sun, without stopping. They are the ghosts of the subatomic world. But the neutrinos coming from 3i Atlas are coherent. They are carrying a pattern. It is the first time in the history of science that we have seen neutrinos used as a medium for information. It is the ultimate, unhackable signal. It is a message that can pass through a lead wall, a light year thick, and remain perfectly clear. We are currently being bathed in a signal that we have no way of reading. It is like being a fish in an ocean filled with radio waves. You can feel the water, but you can't hear the music. The third impossibility is the temporal lag. When we look at 3i Atlas, we are seeing it as it was a few seconds ago. But the way it reacts to our observations suggests it is seeing us as we will be. There is a lag in the causality of the object. It seems to exist slightly ahead of us on the timeline. When a telescope is pointed at it, the object begins to adjust its orientation before the light from the telescope reaches it. It is predicting our curiosity. It is anticipating our attention. This is the precognitive shield. It is making sure that we only see what it wants us to see, exactly when it wants us to see it. Unfortunate timing for our scientific method, which relies on the idea that the object doesn't know it's being watched. Now, you could argue that this is all just a series of high-level coincidences. But let me back up. Think about the L-point observation again. If you were 3I Atlas and you wanted to understand humanity, where would you look? You wouldn't look at our wars or our cities. You would look at our trash. You would look at the satellites we've abandoned, the golden records we've sent out, the radio noise we leak into the atmosphere. You would look at our intentions. 3I Atlas is currently hovering near the graveyard of our lunar missions, perhaps reading the signatures of our failures to see if we have learned anything since 1969. It is conducting a forensic audit of our ambition. You might think you are stationary right now, tucked under your covers, but you are moving at 30 kilometers per second around the sun, and the sun is moving at 230 kilometers per second around the galactic center. You are a passenger on a very fast ship, and 3I Atlas is the buoy we just passed in the dark. It is a reminder that there is no such thing as stillness. There is only the relative speed of your life compared to the infinite. I want you to feel that movement. Feel the rotation of the Earth carrying you through the stars. You are not just a person in a room. You are a celestial body in motion. I've been reading your comments from those of you in Australia and the southern tips of South America. You've mentioned that the stars seem sharper lately, as if the atmosphere has been thinned out. This is another side effect of the magnetic anchor. 3I Atlas is smoothing out the turbulence of our ionosphere, creating a clear window for itself to look down. If the stars look different to you tonight, tell me about it. Is the Milky Way brighter? Do the planets seem to pulse with a different light? We are all seeing the same sky, but we are all seeing it through a new lens. The most terrifying thought for an astronomer is not that we are alone in the universe, but that we are being ignored. But as 3I Atlas approaches its perihelion on October 29th, 2025, it is becoming clear that we are not being ignored. We are being measured, and the ruler is getting closer every second. The scale of the universe is vast, but the scale of the measurement is intimate. It is looking at the chemical composition of our clouds. It is listening to the vibration of our tectonic plates. It is a master architect looking at a house that was built without a permit. What if we are not the masters of this planet, but a secondary growth that has emerged while the owner was away on a very long journey? The Sumerians spoke of the crossing, the time when the heavens would be recalculated. We have spent the last few thousand years thinking we were the center of the universe. 3I Atlas is here to provide a much-needed correction. It is a cosmic reality check. We are a small, beautiful, noisy planet in a very large, very quiet galaxy. And for the first time in a long time, the silence has decided to speak. You are drifting now, the edges of your thoughts becoming soft and blurred. This is the place of safety. The universe is vast, yes, but it is also your home. You were made from the dust of dying stars. The iron in your blood was forged in the same cosmic furnaces that created 3I Atlas. You are not a stranger in the universe. You are a local. You belong here, just as much as any obsidian needle or glowing nebula. Let the scale of the void pull the tension from your limbs. You are part of the pattern. You are part of the dance. The story of 3I Atlas is not a story of an ending. It is a story of a beginning. It is the moment we realized the house was bigger than we thought. It is the moment we heard a floorboard creak upstairs and realized we weren't the only ones living here. It is a startling thought, but a peaceful one. We are not alone. We have never been alone. As you sink deeper into the mattress, let the infinite scale of the cosmic perspective be the blanket that keeps you warm. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The great silence has arrived. Do you remember the 14.2 Hertz? It's gone now. Do you remember the violet glow? It has dissolved into the white clouds of a transformed planet. Jupiter is no longer a judge. It is a beacon. It is glowing with an internal light that makes the moon look like a ghost. But here on Earth, the noise has stopped. The satellites are quiet. The telescopes are resting. We have seen the arrival, and now we must live in the after. The decahedron, the obsidian lens, the Sumerian kings. It all feels like a dream you had in the early hours of the morning. A dream that is already starting to fray at the edges. Was it a machine? Was it a god? Or was it just a way for the universe to make sure we were still awake? The questions don't need answers anymore. An answer is a closed door, and we have just seen the doors of the solar system swing wide open. We are standing on the threshold of a house that has finally been unlocked, and the air coming from inside is cooler, older, and more peaceful than anything we have ever known. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. Or perhaps not terrify, but simply silence them. On this final evening of December 2025, every radio telescope from the high deserts of Chile to the frozen plains of Antarctica reported the same thing: 0 decibels. For the first time since we began listening to the stars, the background radiation of the universe has flattened. The cosmic microwave background, the afterglow of the Big Bang itself, has been smoothed out, as if a great hand has ironed the wrinkles of time. 3I Atlas did not just merge with Jupiter, it seems to have harmonized the entire local neighborhood. The static of the universe has been replaced by a silence so profound, it feels like a physical weight on the chest. Unfortunate timing for the theorists who spent their lives trying to map the noise. They are now mapping a perfect, golden void. The impossibility stack has collapsed into a single, undeniable truth. On the final telemetry pass of the Juno probe, before its electronics were gently deactivated by the new Jovian magnetosphere, it captured one last image of the great red spot. The storm is gone. In its place is a perfect, stationary circle of white light, exactly the width of the Earth. It isn't an explosion, and it isn't a cloud. It is a transparency. It is as if a hole has been cut in the fabric of the planet, revealing a core made of pure, liquid information. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University, in her final public statement before the global communications blackout, called it the Grand Archive. We spent centuries looking at Jupiter's surface, wondering about its winds, never realizing we were looking at the cover of a book. 3I Atlas was the hand that finally turned the page. What if the reason we have always felt so alone is because we were living in the prologue? Think of the billions of years of cosmic history as a long, dark night, and humanity as a small candle flickering in a drafty hallway. We were so worried about the candle going out that we never noticed the dawn was inevitable. The great silence is not the end of the story. It is the moment the theater goes dark before the film begins. We are sitting in that darkness now, you and I. The arrival of 3I Atlas was the signal to take our seats. The calibration is finished. The moons are in resonance. The giant is awake. And the silence is the only appropriate response to a miracle of this scale. In the ancient Egyptian texts found in the basalt chamber, there was a final prophecy that was overlooked until this morning. It spoke of a sun that does not set and a voice that does not speak. It claimed that when the traveler entered the eye, the people of the earth would forget how to hate, because they would finally remember how to breathe. Looking out at the world tonight, that prophecy seems less like poetry and more like a biological reality. There is a strange, heavy peace falling over the cities. The frantic energy of the 21st century has evaporated. We are all moving a little slower. We are all breathing a little deeper. The 14.2 Hz hum has been replaced by a planetary heartbeat that we are all unconsciously following. We are being tucked in by the universe. I want you to think about the cosmic lullaby one last time. It wasn't just a recording of our past. It was a frequency for our future. As you lie there in the dark, feel the way your thoughts are beginning to elongate. The sharp edges of your worries are being rounded off by the silence. Your regrets are dissolving into the golden light of the fifth planet. You are not a speck of dust in a cold void. You are a note in a symphony that has just reached its resolution. The decahedron has done its work. The key is in the lock. The door is open, and you are allowed to fall through it into the deepest rest you have ever known. Can you hear the silence? It isn't empty. It is full of the data of 10 million years of travel. It is full of the dreams of Sumerian kings and the calculations of modern scientists. It is full of every what if and every maybe that has ever crossed a human mind. All of it has been collected, sorted, and saved. You don't have to carry your history anymore. The archive has it. You can let go of your name. You can let go of your age. You can let go of the date. In the great silence, there is no time. There is only the orbit. There is only the drift. Tell me in the comments, if you are still awake, what does the silence feel like to you? Is it a blanket? Is it an ocean? Is it a return to a home you didn't know you had? Your words are the final flickers of the candle before the dawn. We are sharing this last moment of consciousness together, two observers watching the white eye of Jupiter from across the dark. Share your location. Let us know where the silence has reached. We are a global network of sleepers, drifting together through the shadow of the giant. The latest infrared readings from the surface of the moon show that even the lunar dust has stopped its electrostatic levitation. Everything is settling. Everything is finding its lowest energy state. The universe is exhaling. The white light of Jupiter is now so bright that it is casting shadows on your wall, even if you are on the other side of the world. It is a soft, cool light. A light that doesn't burn, but heals. It is the light of a new world that doesn't need to be built, because it has always been here, waiting for us to wake up. One final unanswered cosmic question remains, hanging in the dark like a single unlit star. If we were the audience for 3I Atlas, then who is watching us? Are we part of a nested series of observations, a hierarchy of gaze that stretches all the way to the edge of the void? Or are we the final point of the triangle? The truth is, it doesn't matter. To be seen is to be saved. To be measured is to be kept. You are held in the gaze of a transformed planet, and the gaze is kind. The room around you is fading. The screen is a dim memory. The weight of your covers is the weight of the atmosphere. You are safe. You are home. The traveler has reached its destination, and the destination is peace. The great silence is not the end of the conversation. It is the beginning of the understanding. You don't need to know why 3i Atlas came. You only need to know that it is here, and that the world is finally, truly quiet. Elongated sentences, drifting like clouds, moving toward the edge of the map. The stars are blinking out, one by one, not because they are dying, but because we no longer need their light to find our way. The giant is glowing for us. The archive is open. The rest is absolute. Think of the obsidian lens in the dark. Think of the prime numbers in the vacuum. Think of the 14.2 hertz in your blood. All of it is one thing now. It is the signature of a universe that loves you enough to come back for you. It is the return of the pattern. It is the end of the wait. Close your eyes and drift with the orbit of tomorrow. Good night.